Here's 7 fish that look just like reptiles. It's kind of creepy, but let's get right into it. Number 1 is the snakehead. Now, the snakehead is probably one of the most infamous invasive species here in the US, damaging a lot of different ecosystems throughout the southeastern United States and other parts of the country as well. Snakeheads primarily come from Indonesia. I believe at least a species that is invading the US, but they can also be found in parts of Russia, Ukraine, and all those kinds of countries as well. The main fear behind snakeheads is that they can survive 3 days out of land in the right conditions. Now, I know that if you have a snakehead in Arizona and it pops out of land, it's probably not going to survive past an hour. The main area that they are affecting is Florida, and their specialty is hopping out of whatever pond they're in and going into another pond. Now, they can do this by walking their little fins on the grass. It kind of reminds me of that scene from Cabin in the Woods, about the merman. They can do this because the organs that they have for extracting oxygen from the water and the air, they're kind of like lungs. They're not exactly lungs, but they're not exactly gills either. I'm not really sure. The cool thing about these organs is that they store oxygen atoms within them so that when they're on dry land, they can actually use that stored energy kind of the same way that we, preserve our fat content for energy. They also use, their stored up oxygen for when they're needing to go into another area of water. I don't know about you, but northern snakeheads to me look a lot like Burmese pythons, mainly the pattern morph that they have. It looks very similar to Burmese pythons. Let me know what you think in the comments. Number 2 on the list is Bichirs. There's 100 different ways to say the name, but I guess the correct way is Bichir. Anyways, they're mainly native to Western and Central Africa, and they can come in all shapes and sizes. I believe the Congo Bichir is the biggest one right now. But of course, just like the snakehead, they can also walk with their little fins. I haven't really ever observed or have heard of any actually hopping out of water and walking, but they do have a tendency to hop out of their aquariums and then just die while you're at work. That's my best bet on why Bichir keepers usually lose them, is because they kind of just think they're in the wild, they hop out, they die, and then now you're crying and you're going to the pet store to buy another one. Bichirs, just like snakeheads, have special organs, although I think they actually have something closer to lungs. So you'll see your Bichirs kind of just swimming to the top, getting some air and coming right back down. They like to sit at the bottom of aquarium, and they're primarily carnivorous. Number 3 on the list is the Ropefish. I didn't know how massive these things get. I thought that they just stayed kind of small. I used to own one, but unfortunately, I was a kid. I didn't know how to keep it alive. These things are amazing. They look like elongated Bichirs. Of course, because of their anatomy, they definitely look like snakes. They inhabit the same waters as Bichirs do. A lot of people who keep ropefish don't usually see them, especially if they have like a planted aquarium.
It's been like 10 minutes. This is like the challenge, I think, every time we come to this tank. Oh, there he is!
You probably won't see it moving around in the daytime too much, or when you have your aquarium lights on, due to the fact that they are nocturnal. So to me, that's a downside. I love to see, my animals moving around. I love crested geckos, but they're literally pet rocks. Somebody who's not really experienced with ropefish might see one in your aquarium and say, why do you have a water snake? Moving on to number 4 on the list is mudskippers. Now, mudskippers are an amphibious species of fish or amphibian. I don't know what they are. You know what? They're not a frog, they're not a fish, they're not a lizard, they're not a snake, they're a Pokemon. Mudskippers can jump up to a foot in length, which is kind of insane to me, because you imagine this little thing and it's like jumping like this high. Like, you better have a lid on your aquarium because it might jump out just like the Bichir. Their eyes can also move independently of one another, which is kind of crazy. Like most amphibians, they breathe through their skin. If you don't know what capillaries are, they're basically very, very small veins that are on the surface of the skin, and that helps extract oxygen from the surface into their bodies. They are carnivorous, so you have to feed them a variety of like insects, like worms, bloodworms. Moving on to the alligator gar. Now, you don't really need more explanation other than that. that it's an alligator gar. These gars live in waters with alligators, so I'm pretty sure that's kind of how they adapted their bodies and snout to look like that, is because they're probably competing or defending themselves against literal alligators. Their scales are very, very tough and are basically armor. It's really difficult to cut into them. You have to have a technique to it. There's Bowser right there. That's a sulcata tortoise. Now that I've moved in with my significant other, I now have a tortoise as well. Alligator gars are massive and they can grow in insane lengths. There is other species of gars if you wanted to keep one in aquariums. In an aquarium, I think the smallest species of gar can grow up to 3 feet. Now, I would have been building a pond right now for alligator gars, but they are illegal here in Nevada. So at least where I'm from in Nevada, I cannot keep any type of species of gars. A lot of you on my channel have subscribed because of the Bichir video that I have, which is like a little 5-second short. Moving on to the Kuhli Loach. I don't know, maybe for you they don't look like reptiles, but for me the Kuhli Loach looks a lot like a king snake. They look like a king snake to me just because they're also banded, and if you get kind of like a off yellow one, then it looks like a California king snake. These Kuhli Loaches are an omnivorous species. That is very hard to say. You're gonna have to buy them in groups of 3 to 5. And I think they get kind of big too. I think they can get up to a foot in length. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. Number 7 on the list is a very creepy one. That's why I left it for the last one. It is called the deep sea lizardfish, and it can grow up to 28 inches in length. So about 2.5 feet. Doesn't really seem scary, especially because it's in the deep sea, but they have been known to surface. I would hate to be swimming in the ocean and have one of these freaking scary things come up right by my foot. They live in subtropical to tropical seas, and they're one of the world's deepest apex predators. They're actually an ambush species, so they kind of like to wait for their prey, and as soon as something swims by, those teeth just grab onto those unsuspecting prey. Because life is scarce down in the deep blue sea, they can be cannibalistic, and they also have flexible teeth. Every single fish has a male and female organ to solidify the survival of their species. This explains their least concern status, because in a place that is devoid of light, life, and food, they're able to still reproduce by cannibalizing and also having male-female organs. Let me know what was your favorite species on this list, and if you want to see more list videos like this, then click on these right here.